Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Indian Sun. My guest today is Sangeetha Singh, who has made a rewarding career in the fashion industry in her 30s. Sangeetha has won many beauty pageants and currently holds the title of Mrs. Universe Oceania 2020. Apart from the beauty contest, Sangeetha has walked the runway for major fashion shows, including Paris City Fashion Week and World Fashion Festival Dubai. Not just that, the Dusky Beauty has graced the covers of famous magazines and has also appeared in TV shows like Neighbours and House Husband.
Hi, Harsha. How are you?
Hi, very pleased to have you with us, Sangeeta. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you to India Sun and a very big hello to everyone watching us out there.
Thank you. So let's begin our conversation with your growing up years. Can you tell us something about your childhood, early life, and family?
Yeah, sure. I'm Indian born, is a Chennai born girl. I have been, moving across different cities within India only because my dad was a banker. There are only two kinds of people who move within India. Either you're with a bank or you're in the army. So I'm one of those category. I've, lived in Chennai. I've lived in Bombay, and was in Delhi for very many years, around 15 years. And during that stint, I kind of moved to the States for a bit. I did a short stint in UK, and since 2010, I've been living in Australia. So it's been a decade now. Time flies, but yeah, that's really what the journey has been. I am an IT professional. That's my day job. And but outside of that, I have a hobby and a passion to do modeling, and that's how I actually got into it. But otherwise, I'm a fun-loving person, and I try and do something different every year just to keep myself busy, have something to look forward to, and really, at the end of the day, find an opportunity to enjoy life. That's a little about me, Harsha.
So, did you experience body shaming or body image issues while growing up?
Interesting question. I was probably not one of the kind who would actually, pay a lot of heed to body shaming, but I'm going to probably put a different twist to it. I was a very big tomboy, for a large part of my life. In fact, I was probably a tomboy till I was 24. I actually started growing my hair out only because I was, about to get married at that point in time. Until then, you could actually see me with a buzz cut. I would actually wear very boyish, t-shirts and very boyish pants and stuff to that effect. Now, as a result of which, when I actually used to live in Delhi and travel in, the buses, the, domestic transport, it was interesting because men would actually come from the back and they would think that I'm a guy. And they would actually put their hand on my shoulder thinking I'm actually a guy. And that used to completely annoy me. Just the fact that there is a bit of a stereotypical view of how women should look and how they should dress up was something that I've always dealt with. And like I said, it kind of used to annoy me in the beginning. I didn't come to terms with the fact as to how to deal with it. But over a period of time, I think I just assumed that this is the way I'm going to be. You can take it or leave it, but this is Sangeetha.
So, how did you decide to become a model and how did you get started?
No, amazing question. I think that's a good segue into, and a logical segue into that question. To be honest, I had nothing to do with the fashion industry, or, I never really looked on the fashion side of things or media side of things any time in my life. But when I was actually back in Pune and I was actually working for, a bank at that point in time, I think I came to a point where it really got to it really got to me in the sense that, the routine, the monotony of doing the same job over and over again. And my son was around a little over 2 years old at that point in time. And I really wanted to shake things up. I wanted to do something different to what I'm doing as part of my day job. So, without any rhyme or reason, I went and got a portfolio done. And I have no idea to this day why I got it done, but I did it. It felt nice. And from there on, I started, doing bits and pieces from, and find every opportunity really to get into the modeling industry as such. So yes, I made an entry into the modeling industry at 28. when my son was a little over 2 years old. Unlike what people think that I've been doing this for a very long period in time, it doesn't make sense at all if I look back now, only because, like I said before, I was probably the most tomboyish girl you would have ever seen in your life. So it's been a, so to say, 270-degree turn, so to, that way. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey, no doubt.
So, as you said, you didn't have any point of reference. So, tell us, how did you groom yourself for this industry, and how did you get your first big break?
Yeah, cool. I was very, my thought process with doing everything is that, I have to do something different. I don't typically follow the beaten path, so to say. So, it was not very different when I entered the modeling industry. A lot of people who get into the industry perhaps get themselves enrolled into, a grooming program, or, a catwalk program, how to walk the runway, sort of a thing. I never really got into any of that. In fact, I would not even watch YouTube videos that actually showed how to walk on the runway. It was all like possibly, learning on the job. So I went out to a few call outs for auditions, saw what people wanted, and then I kind of picked up my own style. And the reason for doing that is, when you ape someone, you really don't bring the true self within you. And I wanted to ensure that, what I put out there is absolutely me. So it's been completely, self-taught, and groomed persona, so to say. But like I said, I mean, you pick up pieces as you go along. You meet different people. You learn a lot again. You see different, shows. You learn a lot. So it's been a gradual learning experience from that point onwards, but completely self-taught.
Okay, and how did you get your first break?
First break, I actually, like I said, I kind of started doing modeling when I was back in India. It did not kind of take me too far. I did kind of do Gladrax Mrs. India pageant back in 2009. Did make it to the top 15. But I did try a lot of other assignments there, but I couldn't get a break only because, it was just so much harder to sell yourself because you're a married woman. And came a point in time I said, see, it's kind of really not going anywhere. I said, I'm going to probably just give it a break. But then around that time we got this opportunity to move to Australia. So as soon as we moved to Australia, within a span of a year's time, I started kind of again trying to get back into it. What I really found is that, interestingly, the media and fashion industry in Australia is extremely, extremely organized. What that means is, everything is on the paper for you. There is clarity in terms of what you're doing, even before you get to the job, or even before you say yes to a particular job. And that way, it kind of gives you extreme, like I said, clarity around, whether you would want to take it up or not take it up in the first instance. But the real break was when I actually did the Mrs. Australia Planet pageant here in Australia, and I kind of won the title. And that gave me an opportunity to travel overseas and represent Australia and Bulgaria. So that was the real break. And it was the first ever time I actually had a crown on my head. I've only watched, the Sushmita Sens and Aishwarya Rais of the world, having crown on their head. But that was surreal for that reason. I could almost say that when I was standing on the stage and I was getting crowned, my life almost passed in front of my eyes, and it kind of came to that point where it, felt like it's a point of culmination. So that was the real break, and then things started flowing from that point onwards.
Okay, I'll go a little backwards, and ask you about your struggles. Like, what were your initial struggles in India? As you mentioned, in Melbourne, it was more an organized industry. What were your struggles in India?
I think, see, the fact that again, media, and let's talk about the fashion industry as such. The way, and I really hope things have moved from that point onwards, right? So my experiences are based, on the fact that I'm talking probably a decade ago, and the reality is that fashion industry in itself has very less dignity of labor, and what I mean by that is that people don't value you for the talent that you bring. on board. And there is very stereotypical expectations of how you need to look like as a model, right? So the stock standard tall, skinny, that kind of a viewpoint. And in fact, at the point when I entered the industry, there were a lot of Brazilian girls who were actually competing for the same business that Indian girls were actually being lined up for. So half the time, we would not stand a chance because the Brazilian girls would actually get the act. And very contrary to people's beliefs, if you actually make a Brazilian and an Indian girl stand side by side, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference because we've got the same skin tone, we've got the same kind of demeanors and stuff to that effect. And plus, they come from an open community, so it's a lot more easier for them to say a yes to different types of assignments, so to say. But yeah, for me, I think personally that was extremely challenging. And the fact that and I must say that there were very few assignments which potentially probably stacked up as something that is credible. Oftentimes I would get picked up, and the first question they would ask me is, are you ready to do a lingerie shoot? But I'm like, no, I'm here to do print modeling for a brand. uh, so that kind of expectation was difficult to break through. And I like I said, I seriously hope things have changed in the industry since then. But definitely for people who are entering the industry, that's something that you want to watch out for. If people are asking you for money, or if people are asking you to drop your clothes, you probably don't want that assignment. So that's been my very personal learning from the fashion industry in India.
Right. And you moved to Australia in 2010. That time you had an IT job and your son was a toddler then. So tell us
Yeah.
little bit about, how did you pull off your modeling career in Melbourne? It was a new industry for you, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it was a very organized industry as compared to Indian industry, Indian fashion industry.
Yeah. So I think a large part of how the fashion industry operates in India is it's through network. Like if you know connections, you're able to build your network of people, and that's how you actually probably grow up the ladder. Whereas in Melbourne, there are different avenues that you can actually try. For instance, there are portals, there are websites. There are talent agencies, and then there is freelancing option at the back of all of this. So I think the number of sources available or the avenues available to explore is much larger, and it's well organized, like I said before. So I had to just obviously spend my time trying to discover what these different avenues are really today. And in the last 5 years, I have a lot of budding models, especially people who come from India, ring me up through one of their friends, and they kind of tell me, oh, we've known that you're active in the modeling circuit, can you tell us how do we get started? So obviously there is a bit of a starting point for people who are coming in at this part of the century, so to say. But back then, when I was here, I think the struggle was the fact that I didn't have people to talk to, or I perhaps didn't know who to talk to. And so I kind of had to, discover all from scratch by myself. It was a great experience, but the fact is, it just took me that much longer. But yeah, that was really how I kind of found my footing. But that aside, I think, see, managing a toddler, again, like at any given age, kids are going to be dependent on you. My son is 14 now. He's probably now dependent on me in a very different way to when he was when he was probably 3.5. But the reality is that I was like super organized, and I still am super organized, and hence it kind of helps me keep on top of things. And I used to kind of involve my son. Like I would actually take him along to shoots. I would sit him down, or sometimes he kind of comes over to help the photographer, and he would hold the lights and stuff to that effect. So the fact that we could, I could, as a family, we could actually engage him in all my assignments and my shoots, really made it that much more easier. If I had to keep him, at home every single time, it would have been harder.
Absolutely. In India, many A-list fashion designers like Sabyasachi Mukherjee have opened doors for a lot of models who are essentially dusky, but commercially they're still looking for the fair, pretty girls. So how is it in Melbourne?
It's a very different ask here in Melbourne. You'll be very surprised to find that they do have roles available for people from every ethnic background. Name it, whether it's African or Chinese origin or Indian origin people. So there's really no. I think that stereotype around casting people from who are probably looking a certain way, or probably, and I'm going to say this, probably who are fair, or potentially looking slimmer, and that kind of a thing. I think that is very different in the Melbourne market. And probably just to give you an example, I kind of went for an audition back in India for a very big brand back then, and I will not take the name for a reason. But then, it was an audition in Mumbai. I kind of drove down from Pune, at 5 a.m. in the morning, and then I reached the office. So there was this lady who took me into a room with this other gentleman, and then she just turns to that gentleman and she asks the question, "Is this one of any use?" That's a very bad remark and a very rude statement to make. Like, I wouldn't make that statement, ever in my life. But that kind of, I wasn't sure what I landed myself in. And the fact that, I was not respected as an individual really, really shook me. And then this gentleman says, "No." And then he walks out of the room. And this lady turns to me and she says, "You heard it." And she said, "See, you're not up for this. You're not even groomed well. Your eyebrows are unkept." And she kept saying a lot of things. I wasn't disappointed by that discussion, but I was extremely upset with the fact that you couldn't actually have the basic etiquette of dealing with another individual, and not necessarily look at me as an object who's come to sell myself. There's a basic difference. And that was just very hard. And through the journey back home from Mumbai to Pune, which takes about whatever 3.5 4 hours, yeah, I just kept thinking over it over and over again. I said, "See, there's just so much potential in this industry, but the fact that people are not respected for what they are and what they bring to the table makes it a very bad industry at the end of the day." And that's why people talk about all these bad things about the industry. The industry itself is not bad. I think it's some of the people in there who make the experience bad. And obviously, word travels faster. So again, coming back to your question, Harsha, that kind of a bias is not here. Incidentally, like I said, I get picked up for a lot of roles only because of the way I look and because of my skin tone, and because of my ethnic background. So I've actually, done a lot of TV commercials, including, one for major brands like Qantas, which is our, a key aircraft player. I've done for Virgin Australia and a few other bits and pieces. The very same thing for which I got rejected back in my country, I probably get accepted in another country. So I think it also goes to say that things like this should not stop you from progressing what you want to do, or achieve your dreams. There are going to be a lot of stumbles along the way, but it could have been easy for me to say, okay, let me stop there, and I don't want to do anything ever in this in my entire life. But really, I mean, you just have to take it on your chin, shrug off, and say, okay, lesson learned, and keep moving. So that's probably, yeah, my answer to it.
I hope the young models are listening to you. Okay, your answer leads to my next question. In this industry, it's very difficult not to take things personally when you're so
Yeah.
dependent on your body. You make a living out of it. Also, compared to other women, models spend a great deal of time looking at themselves. So, how do you deal with rejection and hurtful comments? It's been a long. You have been in this industry for 10 years. So, how do you deal with it, or you have already made a peace with these things?
I think the simple answer to this question is I've just accepted myself the way I am. I think that's the reality of it. The more you love yourself, I think the lesser you're going to be worried about what people are telling you. Oftentimes, what we do as human beings, we go outside and look for people for validation, right? And there's no internal journey. There is very less journey from a perspective of trying to understand what I am as an individual, what are my unique skills, why am I so unique for that matter. Not many of us think from that perspective. So I think the fact that I just love myself the way I am, I think is the simple answer to that question. But see, in terms of kind of comments that have come far have been extremely ridiculous. For instance, when I kind of represented Australia at the Mrs. Continents pageant back in Las Vegas a couple of years ago, I was in this big fancy hotel. That's what they put you up in a 5-star hotel, and that's where the whole pageant runs for a week. And what you do is, as you go through the different days and do your practice runs and all of that stuff, you keep walking in and out, and people kind of see you. So I was actually locked in this lift with a set of 20 odd people, and I had this sash on me saying Mrs. Australia Continents. And there's this gentleman on the side. He kind of makes a pretty, I mean, he's quite loud. He makes this big comment. Oh, you're not Australian. You cannot be from Australia, and stuff to that effect. And then everybody is listening to me. And I was a bit kind of surprised at that comment. So I had to turn back to him, and I had to say that, I'm not going to sound Australian either, but I'm actually from Australia. So, so things like that. And, oftentimes I get, probably ridiculed, so to say, for my thick Indian accent. And the only answer that I give them is, I actually picked up a good American accent when I was living in the States. But then after a few years, I had to go and do work with people in UK. So in England, then I had to actually change my accent from American accent to a British accent. And then at that point, I said, I gave up. I said, I don't want to change my accent only because I'm moving places and people have to understand me. The fact that, some other country gentleman or a lady would not change their accent to understand an Indian accent, I wanted to hold on to this accent and really, you get me or you don't get me. It's as simple as that. So things like this keep happening, ever so slightly, but they keep happening. But like I said, it doesn't stick to me at all. Only because I'm confident about myself. And the fact is, like, again, I have stretch marks on my tummy, and I do have to do a bikini round in a comp, but that doesn't stop me because I embrace my scars and I embrace myself the way I am. And then, the fact that each one of you is unique is something that you need to realize. And unless and until we don't do that, we're only going to go looking out in the world for validation. And that's not going to keep us happy personally. So yeah, I mean, my way of dealing with this, just shrug it and then say, okay, lesson learned, move on.
So you've done many beauty contests and you won 4 titles till now. Tell us what attracts you to beauty pageants.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, right? So 2 things that really keeps me attracted to pageants is, one is it helps me keep, it keeps me motivated to start looking forward to something. And what that does is it kind of keeps me mentally alive. It kind of helps me stay physically fit. So it's a way of, again, looking at a healthy lifestyle and keeping yourself happy. I suppose that's the primary aspect of it. But the second aspect is also, most of these pageants have a platform, associated with it. So you're expected to do some kind of charity work at the back of it. And that again, gives me a lot of satisfaction, because see, at the end of the day, if you're not forced into doing something like that, you're never going to do. Because all of us are busy with our day jobs and we can keep complaining for every small thing. But the fact that you typically forced to kind of get yourself associated with some charity organization to do some kind of charity volunteering or work is another lure for me. So I've actually done a lot of charity work through my pageant journey for many organizations like Make a Wish Australia, Food Bank, helping ovarian cancer awareness through Teal Wings of Hope. So that's another aspect that I'm really, really, glued to as part of my pageant journey. So it kind of helps me, stay motivated. I think that's the key part.
Gives you a lot of exposure, right?
Lot
Absolutely.
of exposure. And I think the other piece, sorry, Harsha, just to not stop you there, but the other thing is really the prospect of being able to make friends globally, right? Otherwise, where is the opportunity to kind of make a friend from South Africa? Find a girl from Venezuela who says, come to my country, I'll show you around. I actually had a tour guide from Peru that I met. She's a really sweet girl. She's been asking me to come to Machu Picchu for like ages now. So I have friends almost across the globe, right from Bulgaria through to Russia, through to Sri Lanka, and the whole, and even one of the islands. Hawaii, and so on and so forth. So I think the prospect of being able to make and meet with women of different cultural backgrounds and different walks of life and understand their culture, and be able to kind of build a bond with them is something that really really excites me. So that's probably one of the most important reasons that I probably missed mentioning in the beginning.
Since you have been part of many beauty pageants, tell us one silly thing about these contests.
I think, see, there are many silly things depending on the kind of people that come there, right? So, and for someone else, I might be doing something silly, but the fact that people actually starve themselves, and pageants are not a day event; they're kind of conducted over a period of 4 to 5 days at a bare minimum. So you kind of doing like a swimwear round one day because you're actually marked. Your scores, you scored on that, and then you kind of do an evening wear or a national costume round, and then you do an interview round, and then on the final day you kind of do all rounds together. But there's kind of a pre-judging that happens prior to the actual comp day. But the fact that some of these girls can actually ride through from start to finish, can starve, is something that's completely boggles me, right? So I had this, and when you're actually living, or rather when you go to a pageant, typically the way you are actually put into your accommodation is you're probably staying with another fellow contestant. So there are 2 girls or 3 girls, who are part of, who stay in one apartment together through the period of the competition. I had this one girl. She was actually she was from Australia, but she was representing South Pacific at that point in time. And all through the 5 days, the only thing she did was probably drink some enzyme, and that was the only thing she did. She did not have a morsel of food, and that completely boggled my head. I'm like, oh, this is something that I will never do. And the reason for that is she wanted to fit. She had a really fitted dress. Gorgeous lady though, like stunning woman. She had a stunning dress, but the fact that she didn't want to kind of mess her body up, because see, and at the end of the day, when you go to pageants, you don't get healthy diet. That's another thing, right? So they put you into these 5-star hotels, so you're stuck with all the every meal is a buffet. And then they serve you with like amazing amount of carbs. Now I do understand that's not the right diet to be on, but I think you have to be sensible around what you're eating. Eating too much and eating everything versus not eating anything at all, I think there's a bit of moderation that you have to look at it from both extremes. So that's definitely a funny thing, and I see that over and over again in every competition that I go to.
For sharing that. Okay. You started modeling after becoming a mother. So, did you ever have to turn down an offer or tone down your aspirations because of family obligations?
Interesting question. In my case, the answer is no, because I actually started my career after I had my son. So, yeah, the only thing I would say is my son just gets dragged into everything. That was the sad part of it. But other than that, I don't think I had to tone down my aspirations anytime, at least in my yeah, I can't think of a time that I had to do it. It's only grown from strength to strength from that point onwards. And like I said, see, my husband and son have been extremely supportive through my journey, and they still are. In fact, this evening, my son walked up to me and he said, "Oh, just change that earring to the other one. That looks good." So he's quite into it from that perspective. So yeah, it's yeah. The answer to that question is no.
Good to hear that. Most parents don't look at modeling as a real job. So, were your parents and parents-in-law happy with your career choice, or did it set off a firestorm?
See, it's an interesting question, because we are from a ethnic background where we've always seen competitive environments, right? So sometimes your family and friends don't support you, and that's the reality of it. And not because they don't want to support you, or they don't see. It's not because they see you in bad light. It's because they are worried for your future and they want to see you happy. I think that's the bottom line at the end of the day. So sometimes their comments might just come across as unsupportive, and we've had that situation a couple of times on the family front. But having said that, I must say that my biggest supporter in my fashion and modeling journey has been my mother-in-law. Interestingly, she's been completely on top of it, and she would encourage me wherever I go. And if I'm going to any pageant, she would actually ring me and wish me luck. And she would say, "You're coming home with the crown, you're coming home with the cup." And even to this day, any gig that I do, she's the first one to comment on my social media messages and stuff to that effect. So she's been super supportive from day one, and that's just heartening, to see. So yeah, a few give and takes here and there, but like I said, it doesn't bother me. I take everything in my stride and I just keep moving, because at the end of the day, I think it's very important to take the path that you want to take. There are going to be people, some people might like it, some people might not like it, but you know what? It's my life at the end of the day.
We need role models like your mother-in-law.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, she's definitely is probably my number one supporter.
Okay, coming to the end of this interview, I have a few questions for. What does one need to become a model?
See, I think people have very generic view of when they say they want to become a model, right? So the first thing that they say is, "I want to become like her," right? Or I want to be like her in the TV or something to that effect, right? But I think it's very important to understand what the specifics of your aspiration are, right? For instance, if I say I want to become a model, what does it mean? Like, am I looking for my face to be across billboards? Do I want to see my face splashed on TV? Do I want to see my face splashed on magazines? Or do I just want to do runways, or do I just want to do pageants? It really depends on what that specific is. So unless and until I have clarity about what I want to do, it's very difficult to go that direction, right? So I think oftentimes people just lose their path because they have some very big cloud in their head in terms of what they want to do, but they really don't sit down and list for themselves where do they want to head, over which direction they want to head. So I think the key thing is, it's very important to be specific around what your aspirations are. Spend some time with yourself. What I often do is, like, I actually put all the stuff that I want on a notepad. Interestingly enough, when you actually put those points on paper and you read that again, it just becomes so much more clear, and suddenly it actually feels that the whole universe has come together to make it happen. And this has happened so many times in my life, and it's not just my pageant journey, right? So that's one thing. And the second thing is, really understand the fact, like I said in the beginning, it's important to see yourself and believe in the fact that you are unique. The reason that you are the way you are is because there's something different in you, right? And there's something that you have that I don't have, and I would absolutely die to have that. So you are unique in your own way, and it's important to realize that, and really be comfortable with yourself. You don't have to become a Deepika Padukone, really, for as an example, because I think she's called as a role model by most of the Indian girls this today. I think these days. So you be yourself. You can be a Prerna, or you can be a Sakshi. Who cares? Tomorrow 10 people might turn back and say, I want to be like that Sakshi, right? So so I think embrace yourself and embrace your uniqueness, and that's really the thing that will actually help you move forward, and be very specific around what your goals are. I think that's my 2 cents around what you need to be as a model. Grooming and all that stuff will come along the way. I don't think you guys are well informed as far as that is concerned. Yeah, like I said, don't starve. That's not sustainable.
And do you have a secret talent?
Secret talent. See, I actually play African drum. It's called djembe. Right. So I actually used to play proper classical drums when I was back in Pune, and I had a big drum kit. But then when I had to move to Australia, unfortunately, I had to sell that kit off. And then we were living in a rented apartment for a while. So I had to find something a little more compact. So I actually picked up learning African drum. Now, the good thing with a djembe is that it's just a single drum, and it's just easy to carry. I've actually carried the djembe for my pageant journeys to Bulgaria. It's funny that my whole baggage was misplaced. So my drum actually traveled to Moscow, and then it came back to me after 5 days. So I keep saying that my djembe is more lucky than me because it's traveled more places than I actually have. So. Sorry. Yeah.
Do you sing, Sangeeta? I've heard that.
Yes, I do. I am a trained classical singer, but right now it's more of a casual singer. At home, my husband is a very good singer, and he kind of plays instruments. My son has interest in instruments as well, so we kind of do our own jamming at home. But yeah, I can decently hold a song. So not the best though, but I can hold a song.
Would you like to sing something for us?
Oh my God, no, that just came off the blue. Perhaps not, Harsha. I'm not prepped for singing at this stage. So,
Okay, no issues. So, what's next for you, Sangeeta?
what's next for me? It's interesting. Like I said, because of COVID, we did not have the Mrs. Universe pageant this year. So it will be actually moved out to next year. So I'm really, really excited because it'll be the biggest pageant that I will ever do in my life. Because the Mrs. Universe is a very big brand. So I'm absolutely looking forward to that. But the next big step for me is I'm actually entering the clothing line side of business. So my friend Steph and I, we have pulled a plan together. It's called Power to the Woman. Power to the Woman. And what it is it's actually fashion wear, which kind of explores the androgynous element of fashion in women's tailored fashion wear. So that's what it is. But we have a big concept around this. So the whole idea is to make and help women feel powerful and confident in themselves when they have this fashion wear on. So that's the whole ideology and concept. We're really, really pushing hard for the launch, mid to early next year. Very excited about it. I've only been in the business, and I have actually worked for multiple designers through my journey. But being able to step back and be on the other side of the fence and design outfits is something that's new to me. Not something that I'm experienced in, but I'm absolutely ready to give it a go. And both Steph and I are super, super excited about this whole journey. So hopefully that's where we are headed next.
We wish you all the best.
Thank
And
you
thanks
so much.
for being so candid, Sangeeta. It's been a pleasure interviewing you.
Wonderful. No, thank you so much, Harsha. You've made it comfortable as well for me. And thanks for the opportunity. Thank you to Indian Sun again. And a very big, thank you to the audience. Hope all of you keep well and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.